In the 3rd century BC, a philosopher was reportedly forbidden from speaking in public because his lectures had become too dangerous to hear. He was not accused of raising an army, insulting the gods, or plotting against the throne. According to Cicero, the danger was quieter and stranger. Hegesias of Cyrene had argued about life with such darkness that some listeners were said to leave his lectures unable to continue. Ancient writers remember his name that feels less like a title and more like a warning label. Paisithanatos, the Death-Persuader. This is the first file in the OddKind archive, a philosophy of pleasure that collapsed into despair, a lost book preserved only by rumor, and a teacher whose ideas were allegedly locked away because they made ordinary life look unbearable. The first paradox is that Hegesias did not begin as a philosopher of darkness. He came from a Cyrenaic tradition, an early Socratic school associated with Cyrene on the North African coast. The Doctrine sounded almost bright at first. Pleasure is good, pain is evil, and the truth of life is found not in abstract ideals, but in what a person actually feels. But Hegesias took that premise and pushed it until it broke. If pleasure is the goal, then life must be judged by whenever pleasure can truly be secured. And if pleasure fades, if the body keeps returning to discomfort, if fortune keeps destroying our plans, then pleasure may not be the path to happiness. It may be the bait. This is what makes Hegesias more unsettling than a simple pessimist. He was not merely saying that life contains suffering. Everyone already knew that. He was saying that complete happiness cannot be possessed because the materials used to build that are unstable. The body changes, the mind suffers with the body. What we hope for is interrupted by a chance. What we finally obtain often becomes another source of anxiety. In that sense, Hegesias was the nightmare hidden inside pleasure philosophy. He seems to say, "You told me pleasure was the measure of life. I measured it. The numbers did not come back the way you hoped." Cicero gives us the most infamous trace of the story. He says Hegesias wrote a lost dialogue known as Apokarteron. We do not have the book. We do not have Hegesias speaking in his own complete voice. We only have later reports describing a work in which a man is challenged by his friends and answers them by listing the miseries of human life. That absence matters. The book is gone, but its reputation survived. History did not preserve the argument carefully. It's preserved the fear around the argument, and sometimes the missing book becomes more disturbing than a surviving one, because what remains is not a text, it's a shadow. Here, the story needs discipline. We are not holding a surviving royal decree from Alexandria. We are not looking at the court record, police order, or official transcript. What we have is Cicero writing centuries later, saying that Ptolemy forbade Hegesias from lecturing in the schools because of what his teaching was doing to listeners. So the responsible claim is not that we can reconstruct the event with a modern certainty. The responsible claim is that ancient tradition remembered Hegesias as a philosopher whose words were considered socially dangerous, and that memory alone tells us something important. In the ancient world, philosophy was not always decoration. Sometimes it was treated like a medicine, sometimes like a poison. To understand why a ruler might fear this, imagine Alexandria not as a quiet museum of ideas, but as a machine of an empire. The Ptolemies needed people to trade, marry, serve, compete, build, obey, and believe that tomorrow was worth preparing for. A state survives not only on the soldiers and taxes, but on emotional assumptions. That honor matters, that success matters, that suffering can be endured because the future may repay it. Hegesias attacked those assumptions from underneath. He did not need to call for rebellion. If a philosopher convinces people that wealth, fame, freedom, and social rank cannot reliably make the life better, then he has already touched the wires behind the public order. The surviving summaries of this doctrine are brutally simple. Complete happiness cannot exist. The body is full of changing sensations. The mind is disturbed along with the body. Fortune blocks many of the things we expect, and the things we do obtain do not stay pure. Wealth can protect the body and still disturb the mind. Fame can warm a person for an hour and enslave him for years. Freedom can open a door, but it cannot keep illness, loss, time, or fear outside. From there, Hegesias turns hedonism against itself. If pleasure is unreliable, then wisdom cannot be endless pursuit of pleasure. The safer goal becomes negative: reduce disturbance, avoid pain, detach from promises that deliver anxiety. This is why the philosophy cuts deeper than ordinary sadness. Hegesias reportedly treated wealth and poverty, freedom and slavery, noble birth and low birth, fame and disgrace as an indifferent when measured by pleasure. Not because those conditions are socially identical, they're not, but because none of them guarantees their inner result people secretly want. A rich person can still be terrified. A famous person can become dependent on applause. A free person can remain trapped in the fragile body. Hegesias looked at the prizes of the public life and stripped away their promise. He did not say they were useless in the ever-practical sense. He said they could not rescue you. The great ancient schools became monuments. Plato survived, Aristotle survived, the Stoics became a modern brand. Epicurus became a symbol people still argue over. But the Cyrenaics faded, and Hegesias survived mostly as a dark footnote, the pleasure philosopher who concluded happiness was impossible. Hegesias still feels alive because modern culture has built a softer version of the same trap. We may not speak like ancient hedonists, but we still sell life as a sequence of upgraded sensations. Better food, better body, better room, better status, better audience, better optimization. The promise is rarely stated, but it is everywhere. Arrange the pleasures correctly and happiness will arrive. The pleasure philosopher asks whenever that promise is structurally false. What if the chase does not cure the wound? What if every pleasure that becomes a goal also becomes a dependency? What if happiness keeps moving because the human mind was never designed to possess it permanently? But this episode cannot turn Hegesias into a hero. He saw something real about the instability of pleasure, but he may have mistaken instability for emptiness. Human life is not only a ledger of pain and pleasure. It is also friendship, loyalty, memory, curiosity, responsibility, beauty, and meaning. Those things do not erase suffering, but they do make the calculation more complicated than Hegesias allowed. Maybe perfect happiness cannot be owned like a property. Maybe it is not the throne you reach and sit on forever. But that does not mean life has no answer. It may mean Hegesias judged life by a promise life never made. The story of Hegesias matters because it shows how dangerous an idea could feel when people believed philosophy was not decoration but training for the soul. If Cicero's report preserves even the shape of what happened, then Hegesias represents one of the strangest moments in intellectual history. A philosopher not silenced for attacking a king, but because his argument seems to attack the will to continue inside the king's subjects. And if you think this philosophy was too disturbing for the ancient world, it pales beside what happened inside history's most secretive religion, initiation, a place where people walked into darkness and claimed they came back no longer afraid of death. This will be in our next video.